Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ dhammāṃ saṅghāṃ namasāmi. The theme for this first talk of this Rains Retreat is "Go Away, I'm Practicing Mettā." So the titles get suggested by a variety of community members. There was 175 suggestions to choose from this year, so many titles, and tried to select a variety of topics that cover different important areas of Buddhist practice. So this title caught my eye, since it's both about the practice of loving kindness, but in particular it's about how the attitude towards our practice, our efforts at meditation, make such a big difference. So this thought, or the words "go away," I'm practicing mettā, or I'm practicing loving kindness. Probably all of us who've endeavored to practice meditation have had this kind of thought, something very similar to it from time to time. That we set ourselves up to have a period of meditation, to do some sitting practice or walking meditation, and then something comes along to interfere that is sort of spoiling my meditation, interrupting my meditation. We've chosen the perfect walking meditation path, and somebody has taken my path. Or we sit down to practice loving kindness, and then there's some machine noise outside the hall, or someone comes to knock on our door, and the interruption is then met with this sense of reasonable hatred, reasonable aversion, like, don't you know I'm meditating? Shut up and go away, leave me alone, because I've got this spiritual practice that I'm doing. So and this is, I would say, a useful theme, because for many of us, there are these kinds of mind states that we encounter, and it's I'm not reading anybody's mind, but these, I would say, are familiar to many people, and these come up for all of us, and that the feeling is that I have undertaken this particular practice, or I want to do this thing, and this is a good thing. The intention to practice loving kindness or to practice meditation of some kind, it's wholesome. It's worthy. It's a noble intention. So it's a good thing, at least theoretically. And so we have a skillful intention, but we don't realize the attitude that we're bringing to that. And so then when somebody comes along and knocks on our door, or they make a lot of noise, Lumpur Sumedho used to make a point of when we had meditation retreats, if people came to sit in the hall who had a nylon jacket or a nylon anorak that would make a noise every time they moved, that would get commented upon. So that this sense of you are disturbing my meditation, or if there wasn't this thing interrupting, then I could practice. It seems quite reasonable on a surface level, but I feel it's worth looking at, exploring as a subject, so that we can see why that sense of disturbance or that sense of irritation is arising. And I would say a lot of it is to do with the way that the mind holds the effort of meditation, that we are taking it very personally. You are interrupting my meditation. I am meditating. You have come along and interrupting my practice. And so, even though that might seem reasonable or a fair assessment of what's going on, we don't notice that there's a me who's meditating and you who are coming along to interrupt it. There's a sense of self and other that is woven into the picture, and it's so automatic, so ordinary that we don't realize that. And so then that is the quality of aversion. You are interrupting my meditation. It brings up what we call Vibhavatanga, the desire to get rid of. If you weren't there, if you weren't knocking on my door, if you weren't interrupting me, if there wasn't this noise, if there wasn't this person who's taken my walking meditation path, then I could practice, then everything would be all right. But as the Buddha pointed out in the very first discourse, that desire to get rid of, Vibhavatanga, that itself is a cause of more friction, more dukkha, more difficulty. There's a particular example Lumpur Cha used to give very often in this respect, because in Thailand, back in the old days, before there was a lot of traffic noise or sound of people nearby, the forest itself would have a lot of loud sounds from the crickets and the animals in the forest. But also, even when Ajahn Chah was a young monk, then amplified sound in the local villages would be a feature of northeast Thai life. And he would tell a story of how when he was a young monk on his wanderings as a Tudong monk, he was traveling through the countryside, living in remote places, and he would camp out in forests or on hills or in caves for periods of time, and he would tell the story of how one time he was in this remote area and had set up his mosquito net and was camping in the forest, and then there was this loud sound of amplified festivities from the local village came reverberating through the forest, and he could see himself sitting there thinking, don't they realize there's a monk meditating here? It's a monk who's intent on spiritual practice. I'm a good monk, I keep the rules, and it's very demeritorious. It's very bad karma to be interrupting the meditation of a good monk. And getting himself quite irritated and worked up by with sort of what he thought was reasonable aversion towards this noise, which was interrupting his meditation, his practice. And he would often then recount how he noticed what he was doing. He was creating this aversion, this vibhavatanga, this negative attitude towards what he was experiencing. And then it suddenly dawned on him, the sound isn't annoying me, it's me that's annoying the sound. The sound is just doing what it does. It's just the air vibrating. It comes through the countryside. It arrives here in the forest. I've chosen to come and sit in this place. I've chosen to come here. I've put myself in the way of this, and so now this sound lands upon my ear. And then I create this irritation because I call myself a monk who is meditating. And so if there's any irritation here, if there's any conflict, it's only coming from one place. It's not coming from the sound, it's coming from this mind, this citta, this monk. That's where the conflict is coming from. So he said it's not the sound annoying me, it's me annoying the sound. And then many of you who've familiar with Lumpur Sumedho's teachings and will have heard the story of how in later years, when Ajahn Chah made his first visit to England in the late 70s, they were in this small vihara on Haverstock Hill. There's two houses next door to each other, right across from the Haverstock Arms on Haverstock Hill near Hampstead Heath. And it was a very big thing, having this great forest meditation master coming to visit this little group in London, and this American monk, Ajahn Sumedho, and Lumpur Khenma Dhammo, the other English monk, was there with him. And it was a very special occasion, so a lot of people had showed up, and seemingly, I wasn't around. I was a hairy student living about a mile away at the time, still at college. I had no idea they were there, so I wasn't interested in Buddhism at the time, but I was in Primrose Hill, just about a mile away from where this was happening. And anyway, it was the weather was something like this. It was a kind of hot, steamy weather. And so that they gathered for the evening meditation, and they had the windows closed because there was a lot of noise coming across from the pub. There was loud music playing in the Haverstock Arms, and then they sat in the small shrine room at the vihara, and then the temperature got warmer and warmer and warmer, and they were sitting there, and time was going by, and then eventually they opened up the window, and then when the music was louder, they could breathe. There was a bit of fresh air, and then the rock music coming from the pub was really loud. So then, after a little while, then they closed the window again. The noise got a bit quieter, and then the temperature started rising and got warmer and warmer, stuffier and stuffier inside the shrine room. And then again, somebody opened the window to let some air in, and the music got louder. And Luang Por Chah, apparently, again, I wasn't there, so I just go by the hearsay, but apparently he let this go on for about an hour and a half. So they were just sitting there, and this about an hour and a half went by. Well, the window was opening, the window was closing, the music was getting louder, getting quieter, and eventually Luang Por rang the bell, and then said, and then gave this teaching based on the insight that he'd had in the forest all those years ago, by saying, you think that the sound is annoying you, but actually it's you annoying the sound. And that, I feel, is it was a very powerful object lesson, since they were all sort of packed into that one little place, and they were sort of had been thinking of, this is very unfortunate. This is happening. This is really kind of spoiling the meditation. It's so hot, or it's so noisy. If only it wasn't like this, then we could have a good session here with this great master from northeast Thailand. But in characteristic fashion, Luang Por Chah just sort of turned the whole circumstance into the teaching itself. So this is what we're learning from. Look at how it works. We think that the sound is annoying us. We think that thing is making me suffer, but actually it's what the mind is doing with this in this moment. That is that's creating any kind of difficulty, any kind of conflict. So this, I feel, is very, very helpful insofar as if we notice how we set ourselves up for dukkha. We create these ideas. Say, we're having a Sunday afternoon Dhamma talk, so it should be like this. We should have silence. If suddenly the work crew have been developing some of the site here, if they suddenly showed up on a Sunday afternoon and decided to do their concrete breaking during this talk, then that's be an interesting feature. I hope they don't. I would be very surprised if they did, but that would be part of what we learn from. There have been other occasions where a few minutes into a Dhamma talk, then somebody gets too hot and keels over on the seat, falls off the chair. Then that becomes part of what we're all learning from. Is look, someone's passed out. We need to attend to a medical emergency. So that we set ourselves up. We're expecting this. And then we think of things that can come along and disturb what it is that we're aiming to do. But if we have an attitude instead where we're laying aside those expectations, that sense of it should be this way, it shouldn't be that way. This is what we have the right to expect. Then we're not creating the causes for that kind of wrongness, that kind of discord or discomfort within us. So this sense of how bringing attention to how we set ourselves up for dukkha or for no dukkha, I think is an extremely important. I was also reflecting on this theme. I was remembering somebody I used to know when I was. I used to visit California, and I was living in California for about 15 years. And during the early years I was there, the group would rent an apartment in the city of San Francisco, and I'd be there for 3 or 4 months, and then come back here to Amaravati and come and go for about 5 or 6 years. And then later we opened up Abhayagiri Monastery in Northern California, and I moved there. So in the early years when I was visiting, there was one of the people who was a regular member of the Buddhist group. And so whenever this person came along to the group, it was a fairly small collection of people, and I would chat and get to know folks and kind of hear about their lives. And this person always seemed to be having a lot of difficulties. She'd had had a crash on her bicycle, or she was having a difficult legal case that she was having to deal with in terms of the rental for her place. And one thing after another, I thought, this person has got so many difficulties in their life, and I felt a great deal of sympathy for them in that, this person has so many troubles, so many difficulties, and legal difficulties, physical difficulties, and so that was a very, very sort of strong feature of this person's life. And I hesitate to use someone as a particular example, but it was a very significant case in point in this area, because one day she invited me to have a meal at her house, at her apartment, and so I went round there with the Anagarika, who was the other monk who was staying with me that year. And we were sitting out in the back part of her little house, and had a small garden area, a kind of paved garden area. And she mentioned, I've got a court case going with a neighbour because I want to cut the branch off this tree because the branch is shading my garden, but the neighbour won't let me cut the branch off the tree. And so and I looked in the garden, and on that side of the garden there was a number of plants. They were all in individual pots. And I said, well, excuse me, but why don't you, it seems as though the orientation of your garden is such that you're going to get sun, in the morning and the afternoon. You get sun during the day. And she said, no, yeah, that's right. So well, why don't you move the pots from this side of the garden to that side of the garden where they won't be shaded? And she said, well, I want them there. That's where I want them. And so I was startled. I thought, oh, my. So you institute a court case to prevent your plants being shaded because you want to have them on that side of the garden rather than move them over to that side of the garden. She said, yes, that's right. And so, again, I'm not trying to shame this person or make fun of them, but it was just this sense of like, I think I know why there's so many difficulties in this person's life. And it was extraordinary. That I said, well, wouldn't it be easier just to move the plants? He said, yeah, but I don't want to move them. That's where I want to have them. So I felt, this is how we do it. This is one of the ways that we arrange our lives, so we keep, causing ourselves difficulty. Again, I'm not trying to make fun of this person or shame them, but rather, it was a powerful lesson. Like, look at that, what we do. We set our minds on, it's got to be this way, it should be like this, it shouldn't be like that. I am meditating, things should be quiet, or this is my space, and that nobody else should be here. And because of that fixity, because of that rigidity of mind, then we're setting ourselves up for dukkha. I thought I would share with you again on this theme, but someone who's I feel was quite insightful. I brought along a poem, and this is by a poet called Billy Collins. Some of you might be familiar with this poem. It's called "Another Reason Why I Don't Keep a Gun in the House." Some of you might know this, some of you might not, but I thought I would, if you're not familiar with this, I thought I'd introduce it to you. It's a very insightful way of working with things that we don't like. Another reason why I don't keep a gun in the house. The neighbor's dog will not stop barking. He is barking the same high, rhythmic bark that he barks every time they leave the house. They must switch him on when on their way out. The neighbor's dog will not stop barking. I close all the windows in the house and put on a Beethoven symphony full blast, but I can still hear him muffled under the music, barking, barking, barking. And now I can see him sitting in the orchestra, his head raised confidently, as if Beethoven had included a part for barking dog. When the record finally ends, he's still barking, sitting there in the oboe section, barking, his eyes fixed on the conductor who is entreating him with his baton. while the other musicians listen in respectful silence to the famous barking dog solo, that endless coda that first established Beethoven as an innovative genius. So I thought there's a wonderful example. Firstly, you're annoyed, this dog is barking, and then how can you shut it up? But then the mind adapts and then imagines Beethoven actually writing a part for a barking dog in one of his orchestral pieces. So our mind can adapt. We can reframe things. We can reconfigure our thoughts, our attitudes, and this is one of the great skills of Buddhist practice, is like looking at how we set things up, looking at our expectations, looking at our desire systems, and what we feel is the way that things should be, and then to ask ourselves, well, who says? Or maybe Beethoven really did include a part for a barking dog in one of his pieces. So the set of expectations that are there, and also, as I would underscore, that sense of I want it to be this way, I don't want it to be that way. This is my space. This thing shouldn't be here. This is say how I want to practice. This is how I want things to be. And so any of that element of I-making and mind-making that comes into meditation, as I've been mentioning a few times during this community retreat, right there is where it's important to bring attention, because the more there is a me and my practice, my mind, how I think things should be, how I think I should be, the more there is that I-making and mind-making, then the more we're setting ourselves up for dukkha. There's an interesting sutta where it's called the 5 and the 3, the Panchataya Sutta, sutta number 102 in the Middle Length Discourses, where at the end of the teaching, the Buddha points out how there can be someone who's meditating, someone whose mind is very, very clear, very bright, very peaceful, and it occurs in the mind of that person, I am at peace, I am without clinging, I have realized Nibbana. And what the Buddha is pointing out is that the very way that the mind phrases that insight or that experience, it indicates the clinging that is there. And in Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation, or the Wisdom Publications edition of that sutta, the Middle Length Discourses, very helpfully it puts the I both in italics and it underlines it. I am at peace, I am without clinging, I have realized Nibbana, as a way of highlighting that's the clue. It's my practice, my mind, how I think things should be, what I have achieved, how I am. That right there is the clue as to what how the mind is holding it. And the Buddha is saying how if that quality of identification and clinging attachment isn't recognized, then once again we're setting ourselves up for dukkha. We're creating the causes for disappointment, for dukkha, and that sense of wrongness. So in this respect, then it's in that particular sutta, the Buddha points out that there, with respect to relating to sensory experience, he says there is the arising and passing, the origin, the disappearance, in terms of sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, and thought. There's the origin, the disappearance, the gratification, the danger, and the escape with respect to sense objects. So it's like changing the attitude, changing the way that the mind relates to thought, to emotion, to perception, to whether it's what we call the inner world or the outer world. Here is hearing. There's a sound of a barking dog, or the sound of a plane, or the sound of somebody coming to visit us. There is a sense perception. It arises, it passes away. There's the gratification, the asada, and there's the adinava. There might be a pleasant aspect to it, and there'll be a downside to it. The origin, the disappearance, the gratification, the danger, and the escape. The escape is recognizing it's just a sound, it's just a feeling, it's just the mind saying, that was my walking path, I had called that my walking path. Until this retreat started, it wasn't my walking path. Now the retreat has begun, it's my walking path, I always walk there. Don't they know that's my path? And then when the retreat comes to an end, it's not my path anymore. Again, I'm not trying to make fun of anyone or shame anyone. If you're thinking, how did he know that? But we haven't had any on-site retreats for visitors for a long time. But even for monastics, it's easy to relate to my walking path in those kind of ways. So that change of perspective, the origin, disappearance, gratification, the danger and the escape, the arising and passing, the asada is the gratification. Like that can be the, peace at last, it's finally quiet. The workers aren't here today, yes. And then, they come back. That's the gratification, the asada is like, yes, peace at last. Then adinava, the liability is, this is not a safe refuge. That noise can start again, or somebody can cough, or somebody can come in with a nylon jacket, or somebody can take our place. And the escape is the recognition of it's just a sense perception, it's just a form arising in the world of hearing, of seeing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking. That's all. So that in this respect, if we change the attitude that is present in relationship to meditation practice or development of loving kindness in particular, then what we're still giving a direction. We're still saying loving kindness is a wholesome and fine quality. It's worth developing. We're not dismissing the capacity that we have to develop useful, skillful qualities, but the way that we are setting about bringing qualities of wholesome qualities of mind, like loving kindness or concentration, the development of wisdom, the way that the mind is setting that direction and putting effort into those qualities, that is being radically changed. So rather than it's, I've decided I want to practice mettā, I'm going to practice mettā, that's what I'm going to do, or I'm going to develop my concentration, or I'm going to be developing wisdom. I need to get rid of my chattering thoughts, I need to be more focused, I need to get rid of my laziness and dullness. All of that, I've got to get rid of. All of that is based on the Vibhavatanga, the desire to become, Vibhavatanga, the desire to get rid of. So I like to emphasize, and I've been talking about this a lot recently, because I do feel this is such a crucial area of practice, because it seems so automatic. Like, yes, I have got a lot of chattering thoughts, and if they just went away, I would be happy. Or I have got chronic pain. If I didn't have that pain, I would be much happier. I'd be really comfortable. If I didn't have that noisy neighbor, then I would be really happy. So on a kind of a worldly, practical level, we can seem reasonable, like a reasonable aversion to the sound that's interrupting our practice, or reasonable aversion to a chattering thought or a chronic pain. But the more that is believed in and automatically followed, and not challenged, then we are right there creating causes for more dissatisfaction, more dukkha. In the Buddha's very first discourse, we chanted this morning here, the morning meditation, the Dhammacakka Sutta, when the Buddha is spelling out the causes of dukkha, the causes of dissatisfaction. You have kama tanha, the desire for sense pleasure, then bhava tanha, vibhava tanha. They're like the sort of quiet outriders, the kama tanha, the desire for sense pleasure is like the sort of the big limousine at the center of the procession, and then bhava tanha, vibhava tanha, like the motorbike outriders, the kind of quiet sort of the ones you don't really notice because they're not the main article. The big limo gets the attention, but the outriders of Bhavatanga, Vibhavatanga, they're sort of definitely a presence there. And in terms of meditation, often they have more of a negative and obstructive influence than the karmatana, the desire for sense pleasure. So in this respect, setting the intention, setting a direction in our life, making the effort to, say, cultivate loving kindness or to cultivate concentration, to cultivate wisdom, these intentions can be established completely free of self-view. As I like to point out, the second element of the Eightfold Path, samma sankappo, right resolution or right intention, that there has to be a way that we can generate intention, that we give direction to our life, to our mind. There has to be a way that direction is given free of self-view, free of that I-making and mind-making. Otherwise, that couldn't be an element of the Eightfold Path. Every aspect of the Eightfold Path is peaceful and leads towards peace. It's the path leading to the end of dukkha. Dukkha nirodhagamini patipada. So, the fact that there is right resolution, samma sankappo, the resolution or intention that's attuned to Dhamma, attuned to reality, means there must be a way that we can make decisions, we can give direction, we can make choices that that is both peaceful in its execution, in following it, and in the result. Similarly, with right efforts, the effort which is attuned to Dhamma, samma vayamo, there has to be a way that we take action, we work, we do things. Not only have an intention, but we act and make effort. There has to be a way that making effort is not stressful or burdensome. Otherwise, there couldn't be a samma vayamo as part of the Eightfold Path. So I feel this is it's an important principle to really take in, because we so easily make any kind of effort, any kind of doing is burdensome. Just chatting with some people earlier today, I was pointing out how it's weird, kind of ironic, that in meditation, often the most peaceful moment of meditation is when the bell goes. Not just because your legs can be released from their cage, but because I don't have to keep doing that thing. And even the meditation, which is designed to be leading towards peace and freedom, it's become this thing that I'm doing, and therefore stressful, burdensome, and something that we're glad when the meditation's over. Isn't it weird that it should be that the meditation should be the peaceful part, and when the meditation's over, then you go, oh, that's finished. But often it's the reverse, and we've turned meditation into this thing that I have to do, this kind of stressful task, this kind of chore that we undertake, and that. But we don't have to relate to meditation in that way at all. Though when the Buddha is spelling out the qualities of samma vayamo, of effort which is in tune with Dhamma, which is in a sense effort which is stress-free, which doesn't lead to tension, or is making effort which is free of that quality of burdenness, then it has four elements. As many people are very well aware, the Buddha was a great list maker. So this the aspects of making effort in a skillful way, there are four parts to this. The first one is to consciously restrain the unwholesome from arising. So sangvara, to set the intention and make the effort to not allow the unwholesome to arise, so that they're recognizing through the quality of mindfulness and wisdom, this is wholesome, this is unwholesome. So, jealousy, anger, restlessness, negativity, anxiety, these are unwholesome, these are obstructive. So, to set the intention to restrain those, to not let those arise, that's sangvara, restraining. And then, if unwholesome qualities have arisen, if there is that sense of restlessness or jealousy or fear or boredom, aversion, lustfulness or agitation, if that has already arisen, then to consciously let that go, to recognize, oh, this is unwholesome, this is unhelpful, this is obstructive. Therefore, let that be abandoned, let that be relinquished, let that be let go of. So that with respect to those, there doesn't have to be an I've got to suppress my anger, I've got to suppress my fears and my doubts and my restlessness, I've got to get rid of these agitated thoughts that have arisen. There doesn't have to be any I or mine. I've got to hold this back. I've got to get rid of this. That's all the I-making and mind-making of the desire to become, the desire to get rid of, and that's all extra. The effort can be made to restrain the unwholesome from arising and to let go of the unwholesome that has arisen, completely guided by satipanya, by mindfulness and wisdom. There doesn't have to be any kind of I or me or mine in there at all. And so say development of recognizing when that I-making and mind-making has arisen, that's the key part, because it's insidious, it's very quiet, it sort of slides in, it's sort of through the back door. It's something that's not easily noticeable. But the more that the mind can be trained to recognize that I-making and mind-making, to know that, to feel that, and to let it go, then effort can be made free of self-view, free of that kind of that pressurizing habit. So it's rather like going for a walk. If you want to go out for a walk in the country, then you're just going out for a walk. You're not trying to get to some place as a specific aim, but rather you're going for a walk. But even if you're just going for a walk, quote unquote, it can easily be like you'll find yourself driving forward, you're sort of leaning into the next footsteps, and got to get. And that even just going for a walk can turn into a burdensome chore. If we recognize that kind of leaning into the next moment habit, recognize that, feel that, and then relax, then we don't have to stop in our tracks. It's not like the walking stops and it's kind of we're frozen in place, but rather the walking continues, but there's a different attitude towards it. There's a stillness of the heart as the body keeps walking, as the body makes its way. And so the action is being taken, effort is being made, but without that me got to get somewhere being laid over it, being kind of imparted into the picture. The mind doesn't have to invest in that. With the cultivation of the wholesome, I say, recognizing that loving kindness is a beautiful, wholesome quality, and bringing loving kindness into being, or concentration, or development of wisdom, recognizing these are wholesome, noble qualities. These are valuable. These bring peace and happiness, contentment and freedom within this individual. They're beneficial for other beings around. They're helpful in all respects, and one can recognize these are wholesome, these are noble, these are beneficial, and the effort can be made to bring those qualities into being, cultivating loving kindness. And then if wholesome qualities have arisen, so that cultivation is bhavana, or also you just use as a word for meditation, bhavana, to bring into being, to cultivate wholesome qualities, and then to sustain, to maintain. When there is loving kindness, or there's clarity, there's wisdom that has been brought into being, then that can be maintained. The effort to hold that in place, to keep that going, to keep that fire alive, can be made. And again, there doesn't have to be, I've got to have more mettā, I've got to get concentrated, I've got to develop more wisdom, I need to develop insight. Now I am concentrated, I've got to keep this. All of that I-making and mind-making is, again, completely extra. It's unnecessary. And that the more that the cultivation of the wholesome and the maintaining and being of the wholesome is sustained through, is energized and sustained through mindfulness and wisdom, then effort again is being made, direction is being given, choices are being followed, but it's stress-free. It's not burdensome. There's no kind of efforting involved in that. It's not something that creates a sense of tension, and so there's no dukkha, no dissatisfaction generated on account of that. So if we can shift the attitude to work with effort free of self-view, and giving direction and making effort free of self-view, free of conceit, then when we're practicing mettā, we don't feel like, go away, leave me alone, but rather there's a change of heart. We're ready for surprises. We're ready to adapt to circumstances. Like, I was sitting down to practice loving kindness, and it seems I'm going to have loving kindness for this loud noise that's happening outside my room, or this loving kindness for this searing headache that just appeared in my head, or that it seems I'm going to have loving kindness for this unexpected journey I've got to make across London to go and see somebody in a far off place. If we have that kind of adaptability, then no thing can interrupt our practice. No thing can be an intrusion, and that heart doesn't, develop that kind of contention or that stressing and aversion, because it's the basis of the attitude is adaptability, is kind of readiness to be open to the way things are as they're experienced. When talking about loving kindness, and I like to emphasize there's two attributes or two aspects to the development of loving kindness, if it's being developed in the most skillful way. There's traditionally, often loving kindness meditation is taught in quite a structured fashion, so that many of us who have been on retreats or have given classes or been in guided meditations of loving kindness, and it can be say either you start off with generating loving kindness towards yourself, and then to the other people in the room, then to people in the local area, in the villages around you, and then in the countryside, and in the towns, and through the whole of this country, and out beyond the seas, and as a kind of geographical spread around the planet, and then out into the universe. A sort of visualization process going bit by bit through the sort of geographical spread. They're sort of radiating loving kindness in a geographical way, or it can be through different categories of beings. So first of all, almost always you start off with yourself, as this individual being. And then having loving kindness for yourself, and then first of all those who are very dear to you, who are very close to you, people that you have natural affection and love for, and then for the beings that you are indifferent to, and the beings that you have had conflict with or had difficulty with, other people, and then through the different categories of animals and birds and fishes and insects and creatures. And I recognize that those kinds of meditation, metta meditation, can have a lot of value, and they can be very liberating and helpful. But it can turn into a bit of a laundry list, or a kind of a geography lesson. Okay, what's just beyond Hemel? Is Hemel Hempstead? Is that directly south from us, or is that kind of south and a bit east, or is it west? And you can kind of get caught up in the geography. Or like, what was his name? That bloke. You're so annoying. What was his name? And then you get off on a sidetrack, and it sort of turns into sort of going through your address book, or through a geography lesson, or through the solar system. Is Neptune before? Neptune's the last one. I know it's Pluto. Oh, Pluto's not a planet anymore. You get into these sort of distractions, and the whole point of loving kindness has been lost along the way. So for myself, I found rather than going through these more kind of structured forms of loving kindness meditation, I found that a couple of the ways that Luang Por Sumedho's taught metta bhavana over the years is very, very, very helpful, and that again, it's to some degree it involves self and other, this being and other beings, but it also involves focusing on the breath or using the rhythm of the breathing. So it's a kind of combination of mindfulness of breathing and loving kindness meditation. And once when he was leading a retreat in America, in California, but the first 5 days of the retreat, this was all the meditation instruction that Luang Por Sumedho gave over and over again for the first 5 days of the retreat was on the in-breath to arouse the intention, may I be at peace. May I be at ease. And then on the out-breath, may all beings be at peace, may all beings be at ease. That was the instruction for 5 days, over and over and over and over. And that part of me was thinking after a day or so, oh, he's going to get on to the next bit soon, and then the next bit, and no, he didn't. And then he didn't again, and then he didn't again. And so by about the third day, I thought, okay, this is just going to have 2 weeks of may I be at peace, may I be at ease, may all beings be at peace, may all beings be at ease. And then, funnily enough, after about the fourth day, oh, this is really enjoyable. This is really sabai. This is really, really, very peaceful and easeful, and the genuine quality of metta that I found that when I was using the practices of going through the lists of beings or the geographical spread, I get so drawn into the technicalities, the content, that I'd forget the actual Brahmavihara, the actual sublime abiding, the quality of the heart. But with this way of combining this extremely simple instruction with the rhythm of the breath, just staying with that, then it was much more of an ability to contact the quality of loving kindness itself, the actual mettā, not just the idea of metta, but the quality of loving kindness, that quality of benevolence, well-wishing as a direct experience. And so that was a very big and very noticeable contrast for me. And in that combining of metta bhavana, the development of loving kindness with the breath, I began to see, and also the way that Luang Por Sumedho was talking about it, was that there's really two aspects to the quality of metta. And often when Luang Por Sumedho would talk about metta, he would, rather than talk about it in terms of having a sort of love for all beings, he would use the phrase "not dwelling in aversion." Not dwelling in aversion, which can seem a little bit emotionally flat, but not dwelling in aversion was how he would use it. And that was because one of the reasons was when he was first teaching loving kindness meditation, and he would use these kind of more sort of systematic, structured forms, that he found it a bit so technical in himself, and he would get, lose the sense of the feeling of loving kindness. But also he found that for many people that it came across as just a kind of sentimental, sugary, trying to, as he would put it, think pink, to kind of sugar everything over, and it was came across as a kind of sentimentality, trying to make ourselves like everything and like every being. And so he found that when he was teaching loving kindness in that more sort of structured way, that oftentimes it would have the opposite effect. People would get really annoyed. Kind of, I was fine, Ajahn, until you had that metta day in the meditation retreat, and then I was really annoying. And that's not an uncommon experience. The practice was going great until we did metta, and then I got really irritated. In fact, if I remember correctly, there was somebody once led a meditation day-long at Spirit Rock Center in California with the title, "I Hate Metta." I think it was based on that theme of how annoying that kind of sentimentality, or just metta as sort of sugaring everything over. So Luang Por Sumedho is a very creative and adaptive teacher. He's ready to adapt to circumstances and experiment with things. So he thought, well, let's stop talking in terms of loving all beings. Let's talk in terms of not dwelling in aversion. So because you can be kind to things that you don't like. That loving is not the loving of mettā is not the same as liking. And maybe people are making that mistake of trying to make themselves like everything, and that's what creates irritation or aversion or that kind of I can't. It's just sugaring things over. It's not real. It's not genuine. And so he said, we can be open-hearted. We can not dwell in aversion. We can be kind towards things that are completely unlikable, like a 2-day headache or a machine noise outside the window, or someone has taken my meditation path, or someone is upset, interrupting my meditation. We can't like the unlikable, but we can be kind towards that. We cannot dwell in aversion. So that I feel is representing the primary quality of mettā, is what I like to phrase it as a radical acceptance, that open-heartedness. So like, here it is, whether I like it or I don't like it, here it is. Like the current heat wave that we have here in England and through much of Europe. We might like it or we might not like it, but here it is. Sunday afternoon at 10 to 3, hot. For some people who've grown up in hotter countries, hey, this is quite benign. It's not even 40 degrees. But you might feel this is still quite manageable. But here it is. The weather is exactly like this. This is the way it is. So that the quality of mettā, which is receptive, like the in-breath, I feel that's the real root, the heart of mettā, is that the openness, the receptivity of here it is. Whether I like it or not, this is the way the universe is in this moment. It's exactly this way. And then the other part of mettā is the expressive, so the out-breath is the in terms of our breathing is we're breathing out the carbon dioxide, we're letting that go. What we breathe in is the oxygen that keeps the body alive. What we breathe out is the stuff that we don't need. So, or it's less crucial. It's necessary for the whole breathing process, but the real life source is the in-breath. And so I feel that the expression of loving kindness or benevolence to all beings, that's in a way that's like the out-breath. That's the result of having breathed in, having that quality of wholehearted acceptance, that radical acceptance. Here it is. Life is exactly like this in this moment. It's this way. Then that being the case, then the natural response or the effect of that is then well-wishing, is benevolence, that kind-heartedness towards all beings and towards all mind states as well. Because when we talk about having loving kindness for all beings, again, as Luang Por Sumedho would very, very often emphasize, it's not just external beings, other people, other living creatures, but is also, in terms of the development of mettā as a fundamental attitude, it's also the internal creatures, the inner menagerie, the characters that occupy our own mind, our own heart, the states of mind, our feelings of like and dislike, our fantasies, our fears, our regrets, our jealousies, our excitements, our opinions, all of the different mind states that we experience. That it's important that there's a quality of radical acceptance to our inner collection of beings as well as the external collection of beings. And so that then, even if what we're experiencing is sort of resentment and hatred, having loving kindness for that is not that you're saying it's beautiful or delightful, but there's a feeling of hatred or resentment. Oh, that's what's arisen. Here's this feeling of I hate. And then that which knows that feeling of hate and resentment It's able to be aware. Oh, this is unwholesome. This is unskillful. The heart is open to that. It recognizes that. You're not pretending that it's good or beautiful, or that there's a wish to follow it, or that it's worthwhile following it. But here it is. If there's like a wave of hatred, like, when's this going to be over? It must be nearly 3:00. Time to stretch our legs and have a cup of tea. Must be soon. 5 minutes, in case you're wondering. There's no clock behind me, there's a clock here. 5 minutes till the tea break. But so that having loving kindness for our mind states, the pleasant, the painful, the neutral, the wholesome, the unwholesome, and the neutral, there's a discrimination that the quality of mindfulness and wisdom recognizes. This is hatred, this is resentment, it's an unwholesome mind state. If this is followed, it'll be painful here, it'll be painful there, everybody loses. Therefore, it's part of nature. Hatred is part of nature, resentment is part of nature, yes, but not everything that's natural is beneficial or helpful or useful. Hatred is part of nature, otherwise it couldn't exist. It's part of the natural order. But if it's followed, then it'll be painful here, painful there, and there's more discord and division as a result of that. So that receptivity is that open-heartedness is also part of that is that wisdom factor, the mindfulness and wisdom that recognizes, here it is, in this moment there is this feeling of hatred or resentment, using that example, and so it's unwholesome, and therefore it's here. Therefore, it's one of those qualities to be let go of. If it's arisen, then pahana, that let go, to not feed it, not sustain it. If what arises in this moment is an all-encompassing love and delight, oh, look at all these wonderful people, isn't this great? I'm so happy to be here with these wonderful people, this good occasion. Yes, this is great. Then that's a wholesome, beneficial quality. So therefore, that recognizing that wholesome quality of appreciation, of kindness, of benevolence, therefore anurakana, let it be sustained, let that be maintained, let that be kind of held in being. So this is one particular way of developing loving kindness, that, or one way of working with it. I feel is helpful. It's not the definitive sort of how mettā practice should be understood, but if this is used and used free of those habits of the desire to become, the desire to get rid of, and free of the attitudes of self-view, then not just the kind of formal practice of loving kindness is beneficial, but even when we're faced with the barking dog, or the machine noise, or the aches and pains, or suddenly having to disrupt our practice. I've been on retreats before where literally I had to thinking, great, winter retreat, finally things are at last cooled down, just 3 months of nothing but being in the monastery, yes. And then there's a call, Ajahn, our son's in the hospital in Seattle, can you come up? It's really a dire situation and we'd really love it if you can come. Can you come? Yeah. Okay, Seattle. Better get a plane ticket and get going. And then next thing you know, you're doing your retreats carrying on, sitting in the children's hospital in Seattle for a few days. So that if we're adaptable and we have that sense of the open-heartedness to all situations, then there's nothing that can interrupt the development of loving kindness. We don't have to tell people anything. Don't have to tell our thoughts or our feelings to go away, or anybody else to go away, that we're practicing mettā, but rather every circumstance of our life is an occasion to cultivate that openness of heart, that radical acceptance, and that well-wishing. So it's now 1 minute to 10 seconds to 3. So we'll call it to a close there, and we can have our tea break.
So So you talked earlier about having restraint for aversion, anger, ill will, anxiety. How does one restrain these things? How does one restrain these things?
How does one? The short answer is practice. So, well, firstly, just to be able to recognize what is unwholesome or unhelpful. That's, in a way, that's part one, is recognizing that, if this is followed, if this is acted on, if this is spoken on, then there's painful results. So recognizing that, first of all, is and acknowledging that. Again, I was saying a lot about not taking things personally, not building up a sort of sense of self around that. So with unwholesome things, kind of anger, aversion, lustfulness, jealousy, anxiety, and so on, it's very helpful to the degree possible to not see those in a personal way, because it can be like, I don't want to look at my anger, I don't want to look at my jealousy, and we want to sort of switch off and not feel and not connect with that. So one of the sort of powerful tools that the Buddha spoke about, and is an important part of Buddhist psychology, is what is called hiri ottappa. Actually, outside the temple doors, you've got these sort of two angelic figures, a blue one and a red one, either side of the door, and they represent hiri and ottappa. And these are the kind of representation of moral sensitivity. So that sense of conscience, like when you've told a lie or you've acted in a way that was hurtful or selfish, then the hiri is that, oh, that wasn't very beautiful, or oh, that wasn't really true, or that was selfish. So they are painful psychological states, but they're useful. So in a way, the more spiritual maturity there is, the stronger hiriya and ottappa are. And then the ottappa is often translated as the wise fear of consequences. Like, if this is followed, this is going to be painful, or this is going to have an unpleasant result. So hiriya and ottappa they're called the guardians of the heart, or the guardians of the world, the lokapala. So to first of all recognize those unwholesome, unskillful qualities, and to not take them personally. Like, they will, rather than my anger, or I've got an anger problem, or I've got a jealousy problem, or I've got a complaining problem. Rather, the mind has a tendency towards anger. The angry feelings arise very easily. Full stop. Not I have an anger problem, but this is part of this system. Is that anger can arise, or jealousy can arise, or resentment. Lustfulness or selfishness can arise. So that recognition of it is important, and also that sense of this has arisen. It's not personal, but here it is. There's a habit of this angry feeling, or this jealous feeling, this anxious feeling arising, and it takes quite a lot of work. So in terms of developing that ability to acknowledge those unwholesome qualities and not take them personally, then mindfulness and meditation are the sort of principal tools where we're watching the mind, we're focusing the attention on how the mind works, and then using that mindfulness and meditation to adjust the attitude, so that then it's like, yeah, this is an angry feeling. I didn't invent anger. It existed in the universe before I was around. But here it is, it's felt here. And so both receiving it, acknowledging it, but not taking it personally, then that can then be recognized. And then I would say the last part is then having seen, like, say, an angry impulse or a resentful impulse or a selfish impulse, having seen that arise, say, well, this is unwholesome, this is not beautiful, watching it doing its thing, and then watching it fade away, like, oh, what was it that I was angry about? Can't remember. Oh, look at that. Noticing the space after it's ended. It's like, and I was upset about, Oh yes, yeah. You actually have to reform the problem. Look at that. There isn't really anything there unless the mind makes a problem out of it. Aha. So that, in terms of encouraging the mind to see things in that way or to work in that way, it's like recognizing the good result, like of having watched that angry impulse or resentful or irritated impulse, having watched it arise, and having watched it pass away. And look at that! I'm really glad I didn't act on that. Yes. And letting that yes, so again, really be acknowledged. Like, this is the good result of not acting on an unwholesome state. Sweet. This, yes. Yeah, more of this, please. And that's I would say, it's a good, more is better. But because that, oftentimes we can get so involved in saying, let go, let go, let go, let go, but not realizing what's the result of letting go. And then letting that really be conscious, I find is so helpful. Like, this is the mind not caught up in that state. How does it feel? Very nice. So you're not glossing over that, waiting for the next problem to come up, but working with it in that way. So to break that down, the acknowledgement of the unwholesome states, not taking them personally, working with them with meditation and mindfulness, and then looking at the good result of having worked with them in a skillful way. And then repeat, yeah. Endlessly. Usually the ridiculous amounts of patience are required to kind of over and over and over again, just learning the same, because the patterns are often very deeply rooted, but then if we patiently work with them over and over again, then things do transform over time. So, any other questions, thoughts? Yes, Martin. If you can wait for a microphone.
What inspired your microphone coming?
It is. It has come.
I was inspired by the attitude towards mettā, being eliminate the negative first of all, because you see somebody in the street and you think he's overweight, so, but he's probably a good guy, probably kind to his mother, and people with wrong coloured skin, or speaking a language which I don't understand a word, they're probably all right. They're okay. But it's a start. One of the Ajahns told me about pain, that when I hear the term painkiller, a shudder goes down my spine. I can't avoid it. Because pain is a friend, can be a friend. You think, oh, there's that pain again. Can't do anything about it. But it'll go, it'll pass, and you see the attitude of the usefulness of pain, is that it prevents you from doing something which you shouldn't be doing anyway.
Yes, thank you. By the way, Martin was pharmacists. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
I still am.
Excuse me, yes. So I would fully agree. I think people often, so as I say, they talk about painkillers or criticize or complain about experiencing pain. But just like Hiriotapa, pain exists in nature for a very important purpose. It's the most, in terms of physiology, the nerve endings that register pain are about the most simple nerve endings that we have in the body. The most sort of basic receptors of feeling are pain, because that's what protects the body most effectively. It means like, stop doing this thing that you're doing, otherwise you're going to cause more damage. Or that this has been damaged already, pay attention, look after this, because if you don't look after this injury or this infection, then things are going to get worse. So I've often used that as an example, that pain works by being unpleasant. That's how it does its job. And so that rather than fearing or resenting any kind of pain, or feeling like, wouldn't life be great if we never had any pain, that I would echo your attitude, rather to look at pain as a friend that works. Their friendship is exercised by being uncomfortable. That's how pain does its job. And that it's Hiriotapa is like a moral pain or a psychological pain, that it's useful. It tells us what you just said wasn't true. That was you were bending the truth for the sake of telling a story or self-advantage. So now there's the feeling of ow. There's a discomfort, because that's the signal that things were out of balance, out of whack. And so that it works by being uncomfortable, and pain gets our attention. Luang Por Chah would often say that too much comfort and people get complacent. That Wat Pah Pong, his monastery, is deliberately uncomfortable. It is an uncomfortable place to live, yes. On purpose, because we get complacent, we fall asleep if things are too cozy, too comfortable. So it's like a deliberate use of discomfort, not out of sort of self-mortification or self-torture, but discomfort and pain gets our attention. So like in terms of protecting the body, we look after that knee or that joint in the back or that cut, so that we pay attention to it, so that more damage doesn't get done, and the whole system is benefited accordingly. Any other thoughts, reflections? Yes, please. Yeah.
So, Ajahn, thank you very much for your talk. And two questions. The first, when the unwholesome states arise, how to let go? If you can give some examples. And the other, when these when these states arise and are very strong, how to avoid the reaction?
So the first question was. Can you say that the first question again was an example of an...
How to let go. How to let go. So anger, for instance, arises and sets in me. What can I do to let go? I see that it's here. I understand that, okay, this is not good. This don't lead me to any good way. But it remains. What can I do to,
Well, so one of the very, very helpful practices that I learned from Luang Por Sumedho many years ago, back in the late 80s and early 90s, he used to teach a lot about mindfulness of emotion. And that was getting, like I was saying to our friend here, getting to know emotion but not taking it personally. And because sometimes I think what would happen with people would come to him and say, well, Ajahn Sumedho, I'm a Buddhist, and Buddhists shouldn't have emotions, right? And so that would happen a few times. He thought, wait, no. It's not. That's a wrong understanding. So he began to talk a lot about how to relate to emotions in a skillful way. So if there's a strong habit, say of anger arising, or jealousy or fear, then if you're aware, okay, this is a repeated event. Anger easily arises. My mind is always complaining about something, everything. Okay, so let's study that. And what he would suggest is, don't just wait for moments where that emotion has been triggered by an event, something that somebody has said or something that you've seen or heard. Recognize, okay, this is a strong habit, so let's get to know this, let's study this. And so, and I did this a lot with anxiety. I used to be a compulsive worrier. I used to worry about everything, roughly speaking. So I use this a lot with respect to anxiety, worry, fear, and such like. So what he would suggest is, in the meditation, bring your mind to as much quietness and calmness as you can. Then deliberately invite in some event, say with anger, say some person that you're angry about, or some government, some politician, or some member of the family, or some work colleague who's done something outrageous. And that you just have to, you don't need the whole story, but you're interested in it to look at the feeling of anger. So you just think the word him, or her, or 1990, or this is a very brief trigger of like, okay, you know the story already. You don't have to recount it. So so you bring the mind to as much calmness as possible. Then you trigger that state by thinking of a person's name, or just her or him, or an event, Tuesday. Then the tricky part then is having triggered that wave of, because just thinking of that person's name or their face or their event, often there's like a big sort of explosion or eruption of feeling. But you're inviting that. That's what you're doing this for. So then the trickiest part of this practice is then to take the attention off the event, off that personality, and then turn it 180 degrees and go, okay, this is the feeling of anger. It feels like this. So you deliberately take your attention off the person or the event, and you turn it onto what you're feeling. Because if I'm afraid of you, if I'm worried about you, I'm looking at you, I'm not looking at my feeling of worry. What's she thinking? What's she feeling? Is she okay? I'm not worried about you, but just kind of for the sake of illustration. So the attention goes to the object. So with this practice, and because you've kind of invited the emotion to arise, it's a little bit easier so that you can let go of the event or the person and turn the attention back. Oh, this is what anger feels like. This is what resentment or fear feels like. It's like this. So you then bring your attention to where in the body you feel that. So it might be like a stiffness across your shoulders, or it might be just everything going solid, or everything feeling very hot, or your belly tightening. Or with different emotions will have different effects for different people. So ideally, you bring the attention to wherever in the body you feel the sensations of that emotion. And to minimize the story, just to know this is the feeling of anger. It's like this. It's this kind of tightness across my shoulders, or it's my spine turning into an iron bar. It's like this. And just feel that. No commentary. No, it should be there or shouldn't be there, or when's it going to be over. Just here it is, as fully and completely knowing and accepting that feeling, and then just staying with that consciously, with that the sensation of that emotion as a felt sense, for a few minutes, 2 or 3 minutes, 3 or 4 minutes, and then after a little time, then consciously letting go. And what he would recommend, that I found helpful, was just using the out-breath, the natural quality of the exhalation, as a way of relaxing and letting go of the story, letting go of the emotion, and then focusing on that, letting go and relaxing, releasing, until the emotion has faded away. So with this practice, sometimes it takes 10 seconds to trigger it, and then 45 minutes to let go of it. So, but that's it's important to stay with it until, okay, you're back where you began, with the mind in a quiet, calm, clear state. And so then, in that process, and particularly when you've been able to know that physical sensation, okay, anger is like this, or resentment is like this, and feeling the physical sensation, what I found was that, when there's anxiety, when there's fear, this is what it's like. And so, it's just a tightness in the body. It's just a kind of a stiffness. It's not even that painful. Oh, why do I spend so much time and effort trying to get away from this? It's not that bad. It's not that complicated. It's not that stressful or burdensome. And so, in that process, you're fully accepting the effects of that state. You're knowing it, and there's that mettā, that loving kindness, that radical acceptance for that angry feeling, or that resentful feeling. So you've, to some degree, you've accepted where that's come from within you. And so that you're getting to know the process of how anger works, rather than having it tied to that person or that event or that particular thing. And I found that an extremely, extremely helpful practice. First of all, you kind of need to do it just like in the quietness of the meditation hall or when you're sitting still by yourself. But as you develop that as a skill in the sort of quiet and in a way sort of preserved environment, then you find you can do it kind of on the fly when you're actually with that person, or that politician's on the TV screen, and it's like, and you can, there's that reaction going on. You can turn the attention around, feel it in your belly or chest or your shoulders or your neck or wherever. Oh, it's that anger reaction, it's that resentment reaction, aha. And then knowing it, feeling it, letting it go. So you develop it in the quietness and the sort of more kind of sort of almost sterile environment of the meditation hall or in formal practice. But then, as you develop the skill, you can use it on the fly in the middle of conversations and business meetings and family gatherings and such like. So that was your first question. So can you follow that? I mean, I've explained it quite briefly, but I found a really, really helpful practice of because you get to know emotion in a non-personal way. You're not suppressing it. You're not saying anger is a terrible thing, or I'm an awful person because I'm jealous or resentful or lustful or anxious. I'm an emotional wreck because I'm so anxious. There's no I ams around it. It's just, this is anxiety. This is fear. This is anger. It's like this. And so there's no suppression, but you're just knowing those qualities as a part of nature. And your second question was what?
Thank you very much, Ajahn. The second question is when arises a feeling very strong, for instance, hunger. Okay, I am in a situation, it comes up. I know that it's coming up, and it can be. I can have a bad reaction. And what can I do? I remember once, some years ago, Ajahn Amaro says that when anger arises, he run away to his room to look for the anger. But if I am with someone, I can not be able to run. So
yeah, well, first thing, don't keep a gun in the house. Joking and not joking. The precepts, I mean, in a way, the precepts, taking the precepts, keeping the precepts, that's one of the most powerful tools. That's why in our Buddhist customs that you have this. It's not just sort of like a baptism. You sort of have it once at the beginning of your life, and then you're good to go for the next 60 years. You kind of get rebaptized every weekend. You know, that you take the precepts over and over and over again, because that's what is a helpful resource, is a helpful set of tools. Okay, even if there's this angry feeling. Okay, I've taken the precept against physical, against killing and harming. So, okay, the precepts provide a kind of barrier, a kind of buffer, so that there's at least a little bit of something that mind has to climb over. I often compare the precepts like in the film Jurassic Park, with all the dinosaurs and the reptiles sort of kept inside the park. When the fence came down, then all the dinosaurs could escape and cause all kinds of problems. So the precepts, the 5 precepts, are like the ring fencing the reptiles, or the reptile brain. So the precepts are like that fence, and keeping the fence well established and the gates appropriately closed, so that then those impulses as they arise, like might be angry or violent or greedy and deceitful, and then it's just that kind of a fence, a psychological fence, that it's not suppressing them or hating ourselves on account of them, but it's just that fence being there. For those impulses to be acted on, there has to be a climbing over. So reiterating commitment to the precepts, panatipata viramani, adinadana viramani, and meaning it, as we refresh the precepts, really meaning it, then in those hot situations, okay, I haven't got a gun in my purse, and I want to punch this person, but I won't. Yeah. And Luang Por Sumedho himself, he's talked about how when he was particularly aggrieved at the lodgings monk at Wat Pah Pong in his early days as a monk there, that he felt the monk who looked after the lodgings was being particularly unfair, and he had a certain aggressive impulse. He, being a monk, and you can't hit people, so he took his leave and hit a tree. So I think, ow, he took it out on a tree, but it was like something had to be sort of vented. But he knew, don't hit the monk, hit a tree, and that is a way of acknowledging. There's an energy wants to be let out, but just the precepts are the guardians of the heart. So taking the precepts seriously, and then it's a very powerful, skillful means. It's also a gift to others. The Buddha talked about the 5 precepts as the 5 mahadana, the 5 great gifts. Because if you've taken a precept against being violent, that means the people who you're with are safe. They don't have to be afraid of you. If you've taken the precept about honesty, musavada, they know that you're not going to lie to them. So it's a gift. People can feel safe, can feel at ease. So it's called abhayadana, the giving of fearlessness, is the basis of which is keeping the precepts. Okay, time maybe for one more. Yes, at the back there. If you can use the microphone, that would be helpful.
It's connected to what Sila was asking, sort of, because I have been trying to find I'm afraid of being selfish, because I live on my own and I always look after myself, and I think I'm trying to be unselfish.
You think you're trying to be what?
Not selfish, but I sometimes think I am selfish. So I don't know if that's like greed or anger. So I ask, am I being selfish? I ask other people. How can I differentiate? I think it's a bit greedy and a bit anger, but I'm not sure. And you talk about selfish, and that's what I've been thinking about for a day or two. how I can differentiate, and then, as I say, sometimes I think I'm not being selfish, because most of my life I've done things for others, but then I think there's something inside very subtle which is being selfish, but I don't know. So how do you work with it then? How can I face this one? Because it's elusive. It's a bit like those sidecars, anger's like the main one, and then there's these subtle ones, because I don't want to be selfish, but I am not sure how to recognize it.
If I'm following the thread of what you're saying, that it's difficult to know our motivation in any one moment, and so just to be ready to ask the question, where's this coming from? Like I've been helping out with this, that, and the other all day, and now I'm glad to be in my room by myself without anybody else. Is this being selfish? What is this? How does this feel? And then the more that kind of question can be asked in an unbiased way, to really just raise that perspective, okay, and then just to see what arises, to say no, and then it might be that, well, no, you've been helping out, you've been with people all day long, helping out with this, that, and the other. So the fact that you're in your room by yourself and you just delighting in solitude, it's like, well, this too is something that is praiseworthy and not anything unwholesome in and of itself. Or it can be that it's not, you're not sure. It's like, well, I'm not sure where this is coming from. Maybe there's part of me that's avoiding a responsibility. Maybe there's nothing I need to be doing. I'm not sure. So in that moment, what you can know is the not sureness. Like that sometimes certainty is not available. I'm not sure where this is coming from. Okay, well, let's just watch this and see what it turns into, or see what arises. So looking for certainty in mind states and being able to judge exactly what's going on is, I would say, is a project that's not going to have good results. Sometimes we have a clear intuitive sense, like, no, this is absolutely fine, or no, you're not being selfish at all. And other times, like, yes, actually, you're being really lazy. It might be clear and obvious and close to the surface. Other times, often for most people, like, I'm not sure. It's not clear. It's fuzzy. At that moment, the important thing to know is it's fuzzy. It's not clear, and to not try and fill up that unknown with an idea or an opinion, or just, okay, I'm not quite sure, but let's just go with this and see what comes of it. And that we might want certainty, but often in life, things are mixed, or they're unclear, and so rather it's more helpful to allow things to be uncertain. Well, at the moment, I'm not quite sure what the motivation is. It's not clear. It's blurry. It's like a hazy summer weather, or on a nighttime. It's dark. You can't see very far. That's the nature of the situation. You can't see far. It's not clear. So to be at ease with not knowing is a big part of our practice. There's a wonderful long Pali word for that. Ananya tanyasa mitindriya, means knowing the unknown. Like knowing, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what this is. And you can know that you don't know, and be at peace with that. So that's the kind of thing I'd recommend. One of the things the other thing I would say is that out of a fear of not wanting to be selfish, we can make ourselves compulsively busy, and actually feed a sense of self through trying to be unselfish. So we become a compulsive helper or compulsive doer, and we've got to try and get rid of that that we try and get rid of that feeling of, oh, I'm being lazy, I'm being selfish, by just never stopping. And that doesn't help either. So in a way, to trust your own good-heartedness, to look at your own heart, and you know, I speak about this because I was a kind of compulsive helper and compulsive doer myself, along with being very anxious. I used to deal anxiety by just being busy all the time. But to just trust in your good heart, like to know if I could do more, I would do more, but this is the limit of what I can do, so I'll just leave things alone. And so that makes life a lot more spacious. And so that I would be cautious about not just being busy and active to stave off that feeling of, I don't want to be selfish, or I don't want people to think badly of me, because that it can just make us anxious and busy, and that doesn't help us and doesn't help the people that we live with. So I hope that's some of that is useful for you.
Yes, because I tried a little bit of the second one you said, and then I felt maybe my ego is actually...
If you can put the microphone closer to your mouth.
When I tried to do the opposite, like you just mentioned, I thought, oh, this way my ego is getting much bigger. So it's like one extreme or the other.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I think maybe best thing is when I'm feeling like that, not to do anything. I don't know if that's what you're saying, but that's how I understood it, that you can just rest with not knowing. But the next thing is, then it means that's not to do either from that place of uncertainty. That's not to act.
Yes, to just not to filling up that uncertain feeling with activity doesn't help. Better to be at peace with uncertainty. So 4 o'clock has come around, so let's draw things to a close there for today.